You just moved to Canada and you need somewhere to live. Congratulations. Seems so simple, right? Find an apartment, pay the rent, take the keys, move in. It's not like that. Newcomers, your first home in Canada can be one of the biggest challenges you'll face after your paperwork. Listen up. No Canadian history, credit history, previous landlords, work history, all this add up. Besides the rent that you have to pay, a very large portion of your monthly income. So if you're moving to Canada, and particularly in Ontario, there might be also some important rules that they will take effect September 21st, 2026, that have already created a lot of discussion between tenants, landlord, and housing advocates. In this video, I'm going to explain how renting in Canada actually works, what landlords may ask you, and how much should your budget be. Mistakes you should avoid, your basic right as a tenant, and for Ontarians, what is changing. Let's start with the real cost of renting a house. Before opening this rental website and falling in love with this apartment, start with your pocket. Do not look only of the advertisement rent. According to rentals.ca annual rent report, we have average rent of $2,037 in Ontario, which average roughly $2,577 for condos and apartments. So the market has been softer than a year ago, but affordability is still a major issue in big Canadian cities. If a unit is listed only $2,000, the real housing might be way higher because you need to adapt electricity, parking, insurance, transportation, laundry. For newcomers, this matters because the first few months already come with a lot of expenses. Furniture, phone plans, transportation, winter clothing, deposits, and the general costs start taking over. So before you sign, you need to ask, utilities included, parking included, is there laundry and the unit is furnished, is there a storage fee, how much will it take to commute, all this add up. So sometimes it might be cheaper to rent an apartment outside of the town than renting an apartment inside the town. Now let's talk about one of the biggest problems that newcomers face. It is the credit score. So you love an apartment, contact the landlord, and suddenly you've been asked for 1,000 papers. Employment information, references, income, Canadian credit score, and so many others. But you just arrived. You have to stay somewhere. How are you supposed to have years of Canadian history and references and then pay stubs and notes of assessments? Well, this does not discourage you because no credit history doesn't mean that you cannot rent. It means that you need to strengthen your rest of the application. So depending on your circumstances, maybe you need to prepare proof of employment. Hopefully you have an employment, pay stubs, an employment letter, bank statement to show you have the money, and any previous landlord references, probably from abroad, so in that you can reliably pay the rent. Once you arrive, begin building your Canadian credit history as soon as possible. The stronger and the more organized your rental application looks, the easier it will be for your landlord to assess you without relying only on the credit score. So altogether, play a role. Now, another main big problem that we deal with our clients is the scams. Categories have a lot of scams. So many people think that they found an apartment online, and especially the newcomers are very vulnerable because either they're outside or they are very desperate to secure housing before they arrive. So what's working is that you see a beautiful apartment online and the person tells you that, wait, there's another 5 people looking for this. If you want to secure it, you have to pay the deposit now. No. Any proof of fake urgency, this can alert you that this might be a scam. So what you need to do is either yourself, if you're here, either someone else that you trust, you have to go there and check the apartment. You need to read the agreement before transferring the money. And be very careful when someone creates an artificial urgency. If other apartments in the area are a little bit more expensive and suddenly someone tells you, no, not 2,000, it's 1,000, this has to alert you. And it's a warning sign, not a lucky break. No, you didn't get lucky. They to scam you. Now, your lease is not just another form you sign before you want the keys. No, it is a legal agreement between you and your landlord. Before signing, you have to read through very carefully, understand due days, lease length, utilities, insurance requirements, rules about smoking, about pets. What happens when a fixed term stops? when you need to leave early. Rental laws are provincial. So it depends where you're gonna move. You have to read the specific province rules. Now, for Ontario, for example, there is some specific deposit rules. The landlord can generally require a rent deposit of no more than 1 month rent for a monthly tenancy. And the money is for at least rental period, not a general DAMA deposit. A refundable key deposit may also be permitted, but Ontario's standard lease guide says tenants do not have to provide paid or damaged deposits. So never assume something is legal simply because it appears on the lease. We check the lease, we check the provincial rules. And this is very important when you try to rent an apartment for the first time in Canada. Be alert. Now, to document, as soon as you move into the apartment, you need to check the walls, the floor, the ceiling, and document everything, appliance, bathroom, cabinets. If there is any scratches or stains or damage that already exist, you need to document, take photos, and communicate this in writing with your landlord, and you have to keep all the messages and keep all the receipts, all the communications in one folder, because this will protect you from any dispute in the future and will make it easier to resolve if something goes wrong later. Know your basic rights. So now let's go to your rights and the mistake that newcomers make, because they think the landlord owns the property so they can make anything they want. No, this is not true. And every province has residential tenancy rules dealing with areas such as rent increases, maintenance, landlord earning deposits, and eviction. In Ontario, a landlord can evict a tenant in specific circumstances and must follow a very specific legal process. For most rent control units, we need at least 12 months normally pass for rent increase, and the landlord must generally provide at least 90 days of written notice using the proper form. If they want to increase the rent, they have to wait after the fixed term finishes. So the rent should be up to 1.9%. And you also have to check, is the unit is it first occupied or it's not first occupied? Because if it's first occupied, there is different rules that a unit that is not first occupied. So also pay attention to this. And now, the most controversial topic, what is changing in Ontario after September 21st, which has generated so much debate. Several amendments in Ontario's Residential Tenancies Act take effect on September 21st, 2026. One of the most discussed changes concerns the non-payment rent. Let me explain. For most monthly tenants, the end for notice period 14 days. So if you are September 21st, the minimum termination date will be 7 days after the notice is given. This does not mean that the tenant will be evicted on the 7th day, but the landlord still has to follow the board process. But what it says that the first stage, it's significantly shortened by a week. And Ontario is also defining what can count as persistent late payment. Under the new regulation taking effect September 21st, failing to pay rent within 7 days of the due date on at least 3 occasions within a 6-month period can fall within this definition of persistent failure to pay on time, subject to the regulations and conditions. So, renting your first home in Canada. There is lots of changes between the landlord and the tenant procedures. Some tenants' protections are also being clarified, including timelines connected to former tenants' right to return after certain renovations and presumptions connected with bad faith own use evictions. And this is where debates come in. Supporters of the reforms argue that the system has been too slow and that the landlords need a faster, clearer enforcement when the rent is repeatedly unpaid. Critics worry that shorter timelines could put financially vulnerable tenants at a greater risk, particularly when a missed payment may be temporarily. Whichever side of the debate you are on, the relation for the newcomers is simple. Understand your lease, when the rent is due, communicate early if there's a problem, and don't ignore the formal notices because you might get homeless. So let me tell you the final thing. Finally, do not choose your first Canadian home based only on the apartment itself. There's many things to consider. The neighborhood too. Check the commute to work, public transportation, groceries, schools if you have children, medical access, safety, parking, the cost of everything that's getting around plus your rent. Sometimes it's living further from downtown saves hundreds of dollars in the rent. Sometimes it adds so much of commuting costs and time that saving disappears. And remember, Canada is not only one rental market. In July 2026, national asking rent averaged about $2,037, but prices vary depending on the city and the province that you choose. If your work or immigration situation gives you flexibility, comparing communities can make a huge difference to your pocket. Renting your first home in Canada, it is very overwhelming process and especially intimidating when you're dealing with so many papers, credit history, and familiar laws, high costs at the same time. But the process becomes easier when you prepare yourself, when you read the documents, calculate accurately, and verify the listings, read the lease agreements, and understand the rules where you live. And if you are moving to Ontario, pay particular attention to the changes taking effect next month, September 21st, because some of the timelines tenants and landlords are used are about to change. So, if you're new to Canada and you're planning to move, subscribe to this channel. We break down immigration updates, settlement information, and the practical things you need to know how to build your life in Canada and settle successfully. Follow us for more updates.